In medieval France, wedding attendees would literally trail the bride and groom into their chamber to witness them consummate the union. And if that wasn't disturbing enough, the following morning the blood-stained sheets were dangled from the castle window for the entire town to view as proof. This wasn't romance. This was public degradation disguised as custom. I'm about to expose 5 medieval wedding night practices so cruel they make modern horror flicks look like fairy tales. From forced spectators to frightening purity tests, these customs will make you thankful you weren't born 800 years ago. Here are 5 medieval wedding night practices that were sheer torment. The Church's twisted decrees that turned wedding nights into ordeals. Starting at number 5 is a form of torment that began before the couple even touched each other. The suffocating maze of religious restrictions. The medieval Church had an uneasy bond with sex. While it was necessary for reproduction, the act itself was treated with suspicion, condemned as sinful and corrupt. Because of this, the Church set out an exhausting list of prohibitions on when a married couple could lie together. Intimacy was widely banned on Sundays, often Wednesdays and Fridays too. It was forbidden during Lent, Advent, and countless feast days of saints. Add to that bans during pregnancy, menstruation, and breastfeeding, and much of the year was declared off-limits in God's eyes. But the restrictions didn't end there. The Church even dictated how couples should engage. Only the missionary position was endorsed as proper, deemed natural, and least lustful. Any other position was condemned as sinful excess. Folk superstition even claimed that straying from the approved method might produce a deformed child. This created a constant atmosphere of spiritual dread. The wedding night wasn't joy, it was a trial of piety, weighed down by guilt and the fear of eternal damnation for a single misstep. Childhood erased. The bride before womanhood. At number 4, we move from spiritual repression to a personal violation. Child marriage. Among nobles, daughters were bargaining chips. They could be pledged as infants and formally married once they reached the Church's minimum age of 12. These arrangements weren't uncommon. They were the backbone of medieval politics. Pacts arranged in infancy were often brokered by kings and dukes, while the girl herself had no voice. Picture being barely past childhood, told you were now the wife of a man decades older. Isabella of Valois was just 6 when married to England's 29-year-old King Richard II. Margaret Beaufort, future mother of Henry VII, was wed at 12 and had a child at 13, her health permanently damaged. Sometimes duties were delayed until the girl was judged mature, but there was no guarantee of safety. Treaties and heirs outweighed a child's well-being. Her autonomy ended with marriage. Futures were traded, identities reshaped as tools of diplomacy. The trauma extended far beyond the wedding. Living under choices imposed by others, dynasties thrived on their lost agency. The bedding ritual. If child marriage was a hidden nightmare, tradition number 3 was painfully public. The bedding ceremony. In a world without certificates, consummation made a union legally binding. It was proof of legitimacy for heirs. Because of this, the community demanded a role. After the feast, the night twisted into spectacle. Instead of the couple slipping away, they were mobbed by guests in a loud procession of crude jokes and bawdy songs. The bride and groom were escorted to their chamber, sometimes stripped by attendants before being placed in bed. A priest would bless the sheets, spiced wine offered, and curtains drawn. But the watchers didn't always leave. Especially among nobles, people lingered outside the door, listening for signs the union was sealed. To us, this sounds unthinkably invasive. But in their world, marriage was communal property. Privacy was stripped away. Performing intimacy under pressure became public shame disguised as duty. The blood test that could destroy you. At number 2 comes the grim follow-up, the virginity test. After consummation, families inspected the bedclothes. Blood was taken as proof of the bride's purity. Sometimes the sheets were even hung for everyone to see, an invasive celebration of honor. But what if there was no blood? Medieval science was deeply flawed. They wrongly assumed all virgins bled the first time. A clean sheet could ruin a bride. She risked disgrace, accusations of infidelity, rejection, or even violence. Some women resorted to desperate measures, smuggling animal blood, pricking their fingers to stain the cloth, anything to survive. A bride's entire fate, her safety, her marriage, her life, could rest on one unreliable sign of biology, the nightmare that haunted Europe. Finally, at number one, the most infamous wedding night tale of all, the droit du seigneur, or right of the Lord, also called jus primae noctis, the right of the first night. Legend claimed feudal lords could take a vassal's bride on her wedding night before her husband. The image is horrifying. A couple newly married forced to surrender the bride to her overlord. It symbolized utter subjugation. Yet, history complicates this. Most scholars agree the practice wasn't a true legal right. Evidence is scarce. References often appear in literature centuries later, meant to paint the Middle Ages as barbaric. One 1486 document doesn't affirm the right, but abolishes it as a bad custom. So why does it hold such power? Because myth is stronger than law. Even if never enforced, the fear it represented was real. Lords had immense power, and sexual violence was certainly part of that system. The legend became the perfect symbol of peasant helplessness. The cruelty wasn't in constant reality, but in the looming possibility, the fear that it could happen. Strip away the myth of romance, and the medieval wedding night was no celebration. It was power, ritual, humiliation, and dread. Behind castle walls and stained glass, even the most private acts were controlled by harsh custom. So next time you stress about wedding planning, remember, it could have been far worse. Which of these was the most brutal in your eyes? Share in the comments, and if you want more chilling truths from history, hit subscribe and turn on the bell.